A gente está já caminhando para o final do nosso dia. A gente vai ter agora o nosso último bate-papo. Eu quero convidar de volta aqui para o palco o Robert Anderson e para mediar esse bate-papo, Stevens Hain. Ah, sim, lembrado. Quem quiser fazer perguntas, vai poder também fazer no final do bate-papo. As meninas vão estar passando com o microfone. Só lembrando, a gente pede para que sejam perguntas breves e objetivas para que todo mundo possa participar.
Então, eu vou começar com algumas perguntas para eles dois, depois eu passo para a plateia. Robert, I think that we will start with you. I will speak in English, maybe it's better for us too. Okay. So my question is, you mentioned already about the chance or the risk that you have about having some kind of mind control, right, regarding to transhumanism. So, for example, now we already have some kind of mind control. If you think about elections in Brazil, elections in the US, even with like WhatsApp and things like that. Do you think that the transhumanist people, they are thinking about maybe increase the risk in the authoritarianism or the new fascist kind of power, as be some kind of hitchhike, the transhumanism to control the population?
Okay, so one of the things about transhumanism and those who are pursuing it are they are more excited about the possibilities of transhumanism and not so worried about the impact of it. So it's like Dina was saying earlier about we are advancing because we are putting so much focus on trying to advance. But along with all of these advances, the ethics and the social impact are always playing catch up. But we have an opportunity now to get ahead of the game if we start now.
Okay. So Dina, one question for you regarding you mentioned about how the cost was going down regarding the cost to storage in DNA. But to read it is still a little bit tricky, right? How do you think that, how long you take for us to read the DNA faster than we're doing now?
So actually the biggest limitation in DNA storage is the cost of synthesis. As I showed you, it costs $7,500 to synthesize 2 megabytes. This is a very wasteful, expensive process. And interestingly, though, more of the recent publications have actually similarly turned back to nature. It turns out that nature is much better at synthesizing DNA than we are. So there are certain enzymes out there that scientists are using to actually generate DNA much more cheaply and less wastefully than all of these chemical processes.
Okay. Robert, one more question for you is, you mentioned about you talk about Elon Musk, about the Neuralink, and I mentioned about the increase in depression associated with the use of technology. Again, you already mentioned that like transhumanists are not really thinking about this kind of thing, but I'd like to provoke you regarding the mental health of people that are planning to implant, for example, something in their brain. Is this kind of thing a problem? Do you think that like, you're going to increase the levels of anxiety or depression if someone has some kind of a pen drive here with lots of information going into the brain all the time?
Yeah, I actually think it's going to do exactly the opposite. We can use technology to be able to control the amount of hormones and the chemicals that are released by the brain that can counter anxiety, that can counter depression. And I see it more as a utopia instead of one that is going to cause and further exacerbate the depression and anxiety.
Okay, Dina, my last one for you before I open to the audience. Do you think that like for us to have the quantum computer, the DNA is going to be very important, right? Maybe you could comment a little bit about the quantum computer and the importance of DNA storage for that.
In what respect?
Respect of the amount of data that maybe you can need to have really the quantum computer to process everything. Like we have the IBM computer being released, but still the amount of data is also a limitation, right?
So yeah, DNA would be great because it can store way more data than any of those servers out there. The problem is the latency of DNA is incredibly slow. I mean, it takes days to synthesize, and it takes maybe on the order of hours to sequence. So it's not really meant for quick access. The ideal scenario for DNA is cold data, so really critical data, so data that's critical for humanity that we don't want to lose. That's where DNA really shines.
Thank you. So, agora a gente vai abrir para a plateia, quem tiver questões. Tem um microfone, vai chegar até você.
Hi, great talks, you both. You three, actually, although I missed the first one, sorry. My question is to Robert. In regards, so it was mentioned after your talk, and while I was listening to it, I kept thinking Black Mirror, because it's all about this transhumanism and how technology, in that series particularly, pictures how catastrophic it could be. It's a lot of not downsides, but how it could be used for the bad and not necessarily for the good. And even though you mentioned that up until now we've been catching up after technology is installed, that now it's the time to think about it before it's here, I was wondering if even if that happens now, that we think about it so that it can happen, if we will be able to take in account all the problems it could bring, and not only the advantages that it brings to us.
Yeah. Technology in general can be used for good or bad. And the only difference that I'm speaking about is that the technology will become part of the human body. Now, take your cell phone or your smartphone. It can be used for good or it can be used for bad. Most people tend to use it for good. Well, it's a waste of time, like if you just spend your time on Facebook or Twitter or something. Not that you shouldn't be, but it's all about how you use the technology. The technology itself is not going to be good or bad. It's going to be, and there will be people, regardless of whatever structures are in place to prevent it, that will abuse it. Just like there are hackers today who will use their computers to try to steal your money. But for the most part, society as a whole will probably use transhumanism for the good. And we cannot allow these edge cases, the small percentage of people who will use it for bad, to prevent us from realizing the potential that transhumanism has for good.
Mais questões? Tem uma aqui na frente.
Boa noite a todos. Meu nome é Ellen, eu sou engenheira eletrônica de computação, estou fazendo mestrado na área de ciência da computação. Recentemente eu desenvolvi um livro multissensorial que é para fazer o tratamento e o diagnóstico de crianças com dislexia. E eu não encontrei grandes problemas junto ao Comitê de Ética para tocar esse projeto. É diferente do que eu acho que aconteça com o tipo de pesquisa que se apresentou aí. Se acredita que a gente consiga diminuir o abismo entre ciência, tecnologia e sociedade, colocando no currículo escolar matérias como educação tecnológica?
Você pergunta para mim? Legal. Não, eu acho que a gente tem que, obviamente, rever a forma como a gente está educando as crianças, né? E todos nós, na verdade, né? Se você pega a forma como a universidade, principalmente, ela apresenta a informação, eu acho que ela está muito diferente. Eu estava até conversando com o Yuri do que a gente está fazendo aqui, né? Então, falando especificamente da Universidade Brasileira. Então, a gente tem que repensar, obviamente, todas essas questões e mudar a forma de apresentação do que é a informação, para ser muito mais em cima da pessoa aprender a buscar informação mais do que estocar essa informação, né? Não sei se eu te respondi, mas a gente tem que modificar a maneira como ensina E há hoje em dia, por exemplo, formas, tem uma pesquisa em andamento agora comparando a maneira como você, por exemplo, apresenta informação quase que baseada em memes, baseada em formas de apresentação que são muito mais fáceis de qualquer indivíduo absorver do que aquela forma tradicional, né, de uma pessoa falando, muitas vezes usando um projetor ou algum tipo de desenho ali. Então, a gente tem que modificar essa forma de comunicar a ciência e eu acho que muito mais também de incorporar a ciência dentro do cotidiano da escola. Tem uma questão aqui lá atrás.
Eu vou perguntar para você, mas, na verdade, a pergunta é para os três. As 3 linhas de pesquisa tendem para caminhos mais ou menos diferentes. A sua tenta compreender os limites do nosso cérebro biológico. A palestra dele fala de uma possível até substituição de todo o nosso corpo biológico por um corpo sintético, talvez até o cérebro. E a pesquisa dela fala sobre utilizar um processo biológico para armazenar dados que hoje são sintéticos. Assim, dentro desse mundo nosso real, de que tem uma componente econômica de lucro muito grande, essas linhas podem ser conflitantes ou elas realmente vão ser complementares?
You guys would like to start?
So I think we're getting into a bit of ethics, if I understood that correctly. So I think storing data in DNA is, there's not as many ethical concerns as editing humans. But there are, of course, ethical concerns as with any modifications of the natural world. The thing is, we're using synthetic DNA, but of course DNA is a real molecule. So people could actually exploit these molecules. So if you want to store data in DNA and you order DNA from a company, you can actually encode viruses in there. Now, not software viruses only, but actual sequences that encode harmful organisms.
Would you like to go?
Yeah. So if it's about the ethics, again, it's about making sure we have the right structures in place, being able to really think about the hard things, like what does it mean to be human? At what point have you crossed the line? Who's going to pay for this? How are we going to make it so that it's available and not abused? It's a hard question, and things that we need to start thinking about now.
Eu acho que elas são bastante complementares, na verdade, né? O que a gente busca tentando entender o cérebro biológico e tentando, muitas vezes, provocar possibilidades de você conseguir aumentar, por exemplo, a capacidade cognitiva, pensando aí, eventualmente, uma aplicação terapêutica de psicodélicos, dessa maneira complementa um pouco a ideia do transhumanismo, né, tecnológico. E para muito do que a gente pensa em fazer no laboratório, a gente usa bioinformática. Então, na verdade, a ciência, ela parte do princípio, ela depende muito dessa multidisciplinaridade. Eu acho que, nesse sentido, essa mesa sintetizou bastante essas perspectivas e oportunidades que a gente tem baseadas na ciência. Mais questões? Tem uma ali? É isso? Ah, não, mexeu o cabelo, achei que estivesse levantando a mão. Não. Então, vou fazer mais uma. Tá, ok. I just was thinking about now, you mentioned about the importance of the temperature to storage DNA. Do you think that there is any kind of chance that all of the cool things that you are doing can melt down with, for example, the global warming?
That we'll lose DNA?
Yeah, because like you think about global warming, probably going to increase the cost of make things storage in a cool temperature. Okay, you can go like to the Sweden or whatever, but think more like in the other countries, for example, tropical countries. How hard it to be to keep the DNA storage with the global warming?
Of course, yes. Here in Rio, you can't just store your DNA outside. It would maybe last a week, honestly. So yeah, of course, you would still need electricity if you were to store data in DNA in Rio. As I mentioned, DNA is far from perfect, but it just has a lot more advantages over man-made devices. And in theory, it doesn't need electricity. But of course, if you wanted to store that data in DNA here in Brazil, you'd probably have to ship it up to Canada or whatever, maybe down to Antarctica.
Okay. So, Robert, I have one for you. If you have to choose one specific kind of modification, for which one would you choose for your body?
For my body, me personally, or because I like my body the way it is. But I suppose if there was one area where transhumanism can really have the potential, I touched on it earlier when I was answering the question, but I think that it could really help a lot of people with mental health issues. Because right now, a lot of mental health is about trial and error drugs. You try one, hope that it works. If it doesn't, then you try something else. And even if that works, eventually it starts decreasing in being able to help you. So by having a chip that's constantly monitoring your chemical levels, your hormones, and then correcting them whenever it sees an off balance, I just think it could transform people's lives in ways that they wouldn't know otherwise because they've always had mental health issues.
Eu tenho uma pergunta. Pode? Na verdade, dentro disso... ok. Dentro disso que a Priscila falou, né, do Yuval Noah Harari, que ele lançou esse livro, né, o Homo Deus, e teoricamente a gente estaria mudando de espécie dentro dessa fusão que a gente está fazendo com a tecnologia. E eu queria saber o que vocês acham, assim, se vocês acham que de fato a gente vai deixar de ser Homo sapiens em algum momento para se tornar qualquer outra coisa, e quando que vocês imaginam que isso possa acontecer?
Talvez eu comece e eles continuem, porque me veio na cabeça uma coisa que eu lembrei agora. Bom, a gente já está mudando enquanto espécie, né? A gente, por exemplo, consegue hoje em dia beber leite, que isso não é uma coisa natural da espécie humana, né? A gente não faz o menor sentido um adulto beber leite, mas a gente conseguiu ter uma alteração genética para que isso acontecesse, né? Como eu comentei também, a questão de algumas famílias ou populações ainda muito pequenas conseguem dormir muito menos porque tem uma mutação no receptor que faz com que elas consigam dormir menos, né? Toda a nossa longevidade mudou muito nos últimos 100 anos, né? Então isso também são modificações. De certa maneira a gente já alterou a evolução natural. A gente faz isso há muito tempo com outras espécies também, né? Então acho que é inevitável a gente partir por uma proposta de transhumanismo ou por uma proposta de alterações, sejam elas biológicas naturais ou pelo ambiente à nossa volta, ou sejam elas baseadas em CRISPR como ferramenta. Então, isso não me assusta do ponto de vista como um cidadão. Eu acho, obviamente, que a gente tem que só trabalhar para que isso não transforme, como o próprio Harari comenta, a nossa população em diferentes espécies. Uma que vai ter acesso e que vai estar sendo modificada, e uma outra que vai estar, infelizmente, numa outra situação, inclusive em termos de especiação.
Throughout history, we've seen humans adapt to various changes. So we've, at some point along the history, we've lost our body hair. We've developed opposable thumbs. And humans uniquely have the ability to blush. I have no idea why. But with technology, we will eventually create a scenario where some things that we currently have in our body are no longer required. And as such, I think we will evolve to adapt, and it could almost, if you take it to an extreme, get to the point where we can no longer survive without the technology.
So I guess just to add to that a bit, as Stevens mentioned, I mean, evolution takes time. Of course, some of these mutations appear and you have sort of superhuman traits, but they're not really superhuman, are they? They're modifications that simply occur over time. And actually, one thing that really resonated with me is just the fact that we're living longer and longer. And so becoming a new species, to me, that's kind of distant future, but we have a lot of problems with the fact that our bodies are still not really adapted to being able to live so long, which is largely due to improvements in hygiene. Really, these days, I mean, aging is a disease. It's one of our biggest health burdens. And so for me, I feel like this is our biggest concern these days. Of course, I worry peripherally about using technology like CRISPR for sort of cosmetic modifications. But I think scientists generally want to do good, and we have enough work to do on trying to cure diseases of aging.
Tinha uma questão.
Eu tenho uma pergunta. Já existe legislação que regulamenta o transhumanismo?
Not really, not specifically. There are rules and legislations around technology in general, but not as it pertains to transhumanism. There's also like the Humanist Manifesto, which proclaims the rights of humans, but again, that's nothing legally binding, and it doesn't really address transhumanism. And this is why it's so important for me to get the message out now so that we can get this legislation in place.
Hi, this is a question for Dina. How long do you think until we're able to actually store information in our own DNA? Like, what's the prediction? Maybe in 10, 20 years?
You mean your DNA as in the DNA in your cells, or in general, like personally?
Personally.
Sorry, where are you? Can you?
Here.
Oh, okay. It's much nicer if I can talk to a person.
Hi.
So as I mentioned, DNA is really ideal for long-term storage, so the sort of data that we don't really plan to access very often. This is called cold data. In terms of storing data in DNA, like your personal files, I think it's possible that it could happen in our lifetime. I think now that we're actually, in the last 10 years, that's when we really actually started focusing on the technology. That's a minuscule amount of time, 10 years. And there have been tons of publications at making modest improvements, but really advancing the technology. But I think our goal really is just to find a way to be able to store humanity's more critical data rather than try to get this to market. You know, as I mentioned, most of our data is backed up. Most of our precious data, even at Google, at these data giants, it's backed up on magnetic tape. No one here uses magnetic tape, really. And we don't really see the behind the scenes. So I think DNA, if it can outcompete magnetic tape, it will become a sort of behind the scenes data storage solution.
Eu vou falar em português, tá? Desculpa. Na verdade, a minha pergunta junta algumas perguntas que já foram feitas. Porque, assim, como foi mencionado em todas as palestras, a gente tem algumas implicações éticas a serem consideradas. E no nosso primeiro painel, a gente falou de como a gente está rompendo as barreiras dos governos, dos territórios nacionais. Então, assim, como é que a gente legisla as implicações éticas de tecnologias e elementos que não são pertencentes a uma nação, assim? Quem é que vocês acham que deveria regular isso? Como é que nós, como humanidade, regularemos esses avanços?
The UN?
Yeah, no, go ahead. Go
Yeah,
after.
I think, so there was recently a conference in Geneva about the right of the child. And so the United Nations, I think, would be an ideal forum for this. There's actually a program, since I'm so focused on DNA storage now, there's actually this UNESCO program called Memory of the World, where they store humanity's most precious data in these archives, including that video that I showed. So that was considered a very important contribution of humanity. And so I think, yes, absolutely, we need to think about this internationally and be on the same page.
Só complementando, quando houve quando percebeu-se os avanços que o CRISPR podia trazer, justamente a Organização Mundial de Saúde, a ONU, discutiram o CRISPR, discutiram outras questões também mundiais. Então, quem é contra o globalismo, sem o globalismo a gente não vai conseguir legislar sobre essas tecnologias que vão estar presentes em alguns países, mas afetando a todos, né? Então, isso vai depender de organizações que não são específicas ou exclusivas de um país ou de outro. Don't you like to complement some?
I think for myself, there are always going to be issues about that, because right now I'm living in London, and we are going through Brexit, which is withdrawing Britain from the EU. And part of the reason for that is because Britons didn't like other people infringing upon their sovereign rights. And as we enter into a more global community, I think we are going to see more and more rebellion like that for the next generation. But eventually, our children, our grandchildren, will get used to the idea that political boundaries no longer make sense because this world is getting too small. We need to be working together because the issues are going to be too big. But until that time happens, we are going to struggle a lot.
Gente, eu acho que a gente vai ter que encerrar agora. Obrigado a todos.
Sim, vocês podem descer. Quero agradecer muito a todos vocês. Thank you so much. Agradecer também a todos vocês que permaneceram durante o dia. Eu acredito que tenha sido uma grande oportunidade da gente não se amoldar aos padrões que a gente tem hoje, não se amoldar e ficar limitado às fronteiras que ainda existem. Eu acredito que foi um dia, quem acompanhou as palestras, quem participou das oficinas, foi um dia para a gente poder ter a oportunidade de renovar a nossa mente, conseguir enxergar além e começar a gerar essa expectativa, essa inquietude dos futuros possíveis. Tenho alguns avisos antes da gente se despedir. Você que está com o seu aparelho de tradução simultânea, por favor, não esqueça de devolver, muito importante. E agora a gente está se despedindo, mas antes, para poder fechar muito bem, a gente vai ter um happy hour com um show muito bacana do Jonathan Fair, que é um músico afrofuturista imperdível. Muito obrigada pela participação de todos. Até o ano que vem.